Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, Gus and Justice, and I'd like to say good evening to your guests.
Hello. Hi, Edward.
I did have one question, and early on in the show, I think I have to do something short in terms of preface for the non-white people that are listening. But early on in the show, you were asked by Gus and Justice about the system of racism, white supremacy, and used a lot of different words to describe what it is from your perspective, including words like classism and things like that. Gus asked you a question, if whether you thought white people collectively were more powerful than non-white people collectively. And I believe your response to that was absolutely. Is that correct? I don't want to misquote you.
Yes, it's statistically sure. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And then you immediately went into talking about white privilege. Not white power, but white privilege.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a basic understanding of what privilege is. It's something that's given to you by somebody that's more powerful than you.
Right.
For example, someone can give you driving privileges, and if you misuse those or abuse those, the person that's more powerful than you can take those driving privileges away.
Right.
So this group of white people who are more powerful than all the non-white people on the planet, they're not only more powerful, they are more privileged. I mean, in fact, they give themselves their power through their privilege. They are powerful and privileged at the same time. In fact, it appears as though the use of the term white privilege is just another way of saying white power without actually saying it. I think that's important for non-white people to understand, because when they look at the picture of white privilege versus white power, many non-white people are confused by the use of that term. But what's really being discussed is the power that white people have and what they're able to do as a result of having that power. And so when this collective group of white people, all the white people on the planet, who are more powerful than all the non-white people on the planet, part of the privilege that they have is they mistreat people on the basis of color. They mistreat the people who they say are not white. And that is white supremacy. The mistreatment of people on the basis of color is racism. Racism, white supremacy is the same thing. So my question to you, I wanted to make sure that the non-white people had that picture in their mind before I asked the question. The question I have for you is, when white people use the term white privilege rather than use the term white power, do they do that in order to confuse non-white people? That's my question. Thank you.
I can't speak for all white people, so I can only say when I use that, I don't. I'm making a distinction just like you did that. You have to have power to confer a set of privileges, right? And like with driving, you can take them away. And that was what I was talking about in the passage that Justice mentioned about white people who are, transgressive, white traitors. That then those who are in power, the whites who are in power, they can take power and privilege away from whites who are not in power. So there's a distinction that I make in all sincerity, because I think it's an important one, especially when we look at working together cross-culture, cross-race, cross-ethnicity to end white supremacy and racism. I think it's an important distinction. So, no, I don't use it to confuse people.
Power and white privilege. She was really glad that you pointed that out. Is there anything else that stood out about the suspected racist Dr. June Terpstra?
Oh, no, that was, I started to ask her a follow-up question because even once she gave her answer to the question I asked, she still began to make the distinction of white people with power versus white people without power. And at the same time saying that white people collectively are more powerful than non-white people. So, that the whole term white privilege is just a refined way of talking about white power. That's all it is. It's part of the racist code now, the term white privilege. It's just a way of saying white power without actually saying white power. And so her vernacular is rooted in racist code. Now, she says that there are some white people who will practice racism, but they don't know that they're practicing racism. Now, at the same time, they know that they're more powerful than non-white people, but they, think about it. Just think about that, man. That's Tim Wise.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
That's Peggy McIntosh. That's all of them. That's Dr. Robert Jensen. That's, all rolled up into one. They're using the same words to mean the same thing.
Isn't it? Oh, my apologies for interrupting. I was just going to say, has it been your observation when you observe that phenomenon where everybody is doing the same thing and is constructed? That's codification.
Yeah, that's a code, racist code. That's how it works. That's how it works. You're witnessing it. See, there was a time where white people were so abusive toward non-white people. You didn't have a chance to witness that. The only thing you witnessed, if you were around back in those days, was getting hit across the head or lynched or shot or burned, but you didn't have the benefit. The refinement of racism, white supremacy is a double-edged sword, and they know it. You didn't have the benefit of being able to listen to them talk and get an understanding of what they're talking about and how it works to maintain the system. I remember Dr. Welson used to talk about what is it that white people talk about when no non-white people around. But under the refinement of racism, white supremacy, you don't even need to know that. You can talk to them directly and get an understanding of how the system works. And as racist code, she just laid it right out. I was going to follow up by asking, do you realize it's a contradiction in your discourse? On one hand, you say white people are more collectively than non-white people. On the other hand, you say some white people are less powerful. How do you get away with that? See, that alone will confuse non-white people. Unless she's talking about there are some white people who are less powerful than other white people. Well, what difference does it make? They are more powerful than other white people. Yeah. It's amazing to listen to them talk themselves into circles. If you know what to listen for, you can catch them every time. They're just talking in circles. And for them, that works because it helps to keep the system going.
Particularly if non-white people are not very serious. That's I do not believe in coincidence. That is a matter of record. That was, I think, the first thing she said about the seriousness of the questions being asked and the tone. That strategy, them just talking and saying things that are contradictory, it works really well if you're talking to people who are not that serious. They're not really paying that close of attention to what you're saying. They're not really thinking about it to see if it makes sense. If you're not really serious about racism, white supremacy, white people will be willing to talk to you or...
Yes, sir. I mean, the only reason to talk about a privilege is something you don't have to do nothing to get. Keep that in mind. But if you are powerful, you had to do something to get that power. The message that the more refined racist white supremacists are sending to non-white people is, yeah, you know, the system exists. It's unfortunate, you know, and I benefit from it. But I ain't doing nothing to get the benefits. I just benefit from it. See, that's the message that they're trying to send to us. And we are sucking it up. We're sucking it up. But really, white privilege is just another way to say white power. That's all it is.